This podcast is kindly sponsored by Camera Museum of London at 44 Museum Street. Welcome to a Fish Out of Water podcast. This is your host, Richard Lippman. We have here Elena. I'm going to try to pronounce your last name.
Don't. Lyubarskaya, actually it is, but very few people succeed in pronouncing it.
Indeed. Tell us what you do. Tell us a bit about your journey.
Okay, so I am a creator, writer, and producer for mainly TV shows, even though my journey, hopefully in the future, also takes me in the other realms of like more new forms of storytelling. But originally, I think I started, my journey started with working, like dreaming to be a theater director in my 20s and working in theater for 10 years in a very kind of, non-conventional type of theater, which is called post-dramatic theater. Which has been like a research in the fields of theater that doesn't tell stories. And although like I admire the projects I've been doing back then, possibly exactly this experience has led me to the moment around the beginning of my 30s where I wanted, to the contrary, do something very non-artistic, very mainstream, and go into the TV and TV series. And back then I was still living in Russia, like this country still existed in the way it doesn't exist anymore now. And I've been so I wrote a TV series there while still working in the theater. At first it was like a way to make money, while devoting yourself to art, but in the process I realized I like this stuff that you do to make money actually more than the art making. And so I became a producer, and I worked still in Russia for many years as producer for factual entertainment reality shows, and then eventually development producer for drama. And here we are, like, this is about 2013, 2014 I'm talking about now. This is where, like, in Russia it became pretty clear that like the politics is going to just deteriorate further. And I decided to leave the country and like find some other country where I can invest my human capital, which coincided with also this age of being like 30 something and deciding that, okay, finally I need to really find out what I want to do. And as I emigrated, several broadcasters from Russia who knew me as a producer found out that I left the country and were like, oh, means you now are not a producer anymore. They want to try to write for us because we have some shows where we need writers and you could do it. And I said, yeah, sure. I really need an online job. And this is how it started, because suddenly that was a way for me to make money online, writing scripts, which, like, to my huge surprise, turned out to also be something I like really enjoy doing. And I was like, for the first time, I really feel I'm doing exactly what I want to do, which was like pretty shocking. And with me being already like an emigrant, but not an immigrant, and kind of just hopping around the world looking for visa, I applied to a program called Serialized, which is based in Berlin. And I think I should speak more about it, because for anybody who wants to like make a career in TV series, it's a very good opportunity. It's a program, it's a joint program of Deutsche Film und Fernseh Academy, so like a German Academy of Film and TV. And I think London Film School is involved, Danish Film School is involved. And what's more important, that it has a board involving like a lot of real serious players on European TV landscape. Like this year, I know Disney Germany is a part of it. There are always like big production companies that take part in the program, meaning not just that I think they support it with money, but they support it with their expertise. They meet the participants. So basically this program is like, it's 9 to 5 full time, 9 months thing, where people come with TV show projects. And in this year, they have to write a pilot for this project, of course, but mainly what they do is like every day, basically, you meet a new professional from TV and you pitch your project again. Like I've pitched my project from that program maybe 100 times. and you get new feedback. And, you know, pitching is not just an art of like selling your stuff. Like you can't really sell your stuff until you really clearly know what it is. So this kind of 9 months help people really define what they're doing in their projects. And so this I've done with 10 other participants. And then in the end of this program, you also like, you go to different places. You go to London, you go to Denmark or Cannes Series, some festivals. You get a feeling of what the industry is. And then in the end, you have like a big final pitch in Berlin, where also a lot of industry players come to, where you pitch a project and where you potentially find producers to work on this project you develop, or often on other projects that come later. And so with me, so I did this in 2015 to 2016, and I graduated in 2016. And I met, actually, I met my current agent, Fabian Haslop from Players, who approached me after the pitch and said, wow, I really like your thinking. And so this is how my journey kind of in Europe started. So now I don't know what, like, where should I go from here? What should I say? What I do now? Or like, so like, you know, nobody wanted to hire me as a staff writer for writers' rooms. Like I didn't get many offers like that for different reasons. You know, first of all, I work in Germany and now I'm fluent in German, but I wasn't. And also, I guess, so I was always more of a person who really creates concepts of TV shows. And kind of this is like in my personal case, this is how my career kind of propelled. I developed this concept called Pauline, which is now on Disney Plus. I developed it in a residency, which is called Cannes Series Institute. It's like a 3-month residency in Cannes. It was also like for 8 young writers to work for 3 months with script editors to develop a pilot and the Bible. I like my project won that residency, but then like the deal with Canal Plus didn't happen, which was supposed to be the outcome of the residency. My agent said I can get a better deal in Germany, which ended up being true. So my agent sold this project to Netflix. Netflix brought on board the production company. The show was in development with Netflix for a few years. Then it got canceled at Netflix. Like this is just a typical story of every TV show. Then Disney bought it. So like with development having started, I think in 2017, now we're in 2024 and the project has finally premiered. It's about a teenage mother, like a teenage girl who gets pregnant from the devil and gets superpowers with her pregnancy. And of course, it's ironic that while I was writing it, I was more like, of course, like my reference character was the teenage girl because I was myself a pretty young mother. But by the time it premieres now, I'm watching it and I feel I relate more to her mother because is in the time this was in development, my daughter became a teenager, you know, so which is funny. So another show I created and also had written is now in production, where I can't say more, unfortunately, except for it being in production with Disney Plus Germany too. And I'm like, looks like I'm embarking on a new show adventure this fall or summer, which I also can't tell much about because it's just the beginning. And like, so you see, there's just the shows. Like in the meantime, has been 10 others where I was developing them, or I've been working on shows of other people in different capacities, from being in their writer's room, where I eventually started getting hired sometimes, to, I don't know, being a head writer of a show created by somebody else who's not a writer, you know, and different other adventures in between. I've also, last year, I got script consulting education through a wonderful program in Midpoint Institute, based in Prague. So, because I felt I want to improve my feedback giving skills, and I also recommend Midpoint to everybody. It's a program run by wonderful people, like really great professionals and just really good people. So, like, shortly speaking, that's it. Like, now we can, like, depending on what you're interested in, where would you go more in depth to talk about, like, you know?
Yeah, let's go into the education aspect. Is it true that everything you have experienced is like in those books on writing? on screenplays, like the the mythical journey. You have so many different types of books about screenwriting. Is it all true, or is it, or is it different today in modern times?
For me, like, so it is like I had to educate myself, like, because, like, from one point of view, I spent some time in theater. So, some basics of like what drama is, what is emotion, what is the structure I got from like on stage experience. But yes, in the like years when I was like breaking in, like, I think it's 50-50. 50% is reading scripts, and there are like wonderful websites for this, like BBC Writers Room, for example, has a great collection of scripts. And then there is this amazing website called Google Writing, like, it's called, like, yeah, it's like a script library, TV writing Google sites, where there is like, they try to get as many pilot scripts as they can from UK and US every year. And so I think like reading scripts, especially scripts in the genres that I was pursuing and analyzing them, was like an extremely useful thing. And now I keep doing it. Like, I just bought Succession scripts. It's like a six volume thing, and this is both pleasant, but like I did with a pen and paper. I highlight things that surprise me. And books too. Of course, when you speak about books, like, you mean books like Save the Cat or like John Trudy or like stuff like this. I have to say, yes, I read all of them, especially because I was so clueless at some point. Like, okay, this is the show I want to make, but how do I build a story, even from the plot perspective? Like, these things that right now are in my blood, like, I understand I need to like set it up, and then it has to, like, the problems have to develop, and then there is like this midpoint thing, and then there's like a big crisis. So like, I didn't know all that. For me, like, it was like a desert. What do I do? How do I fill this hour in a way that it becomes a story? So yes, I did all this, but of course, like, you have to take it always a pinch of salt. It's not like when somebody reads the book and then goes, because you meet these people in the industry, that's how it's in the book, this is how we have to do it. That's of course not how it's meant. And also, which books, like, for example, the most influential book, the book that helped me the most, was actually a book called Into the Woods by your compatriot John York, because it speaks not just about like, okay, here are the bricks from which you build the structure, but it reflects really deeply on this point where I feel like it's the weakest point of like, how do you connect this whole midpoint crisis expositions, like the plot structure, with like the main bread and butter of our work, which is like character and theme. And like, it took me, I don't know, I remember I had months, even years, when I was kind of banging, like, the feeling I had that I'm like banging my forehead against the wall, trying to figure it out. And it was never truly figured out until I met John York, actually. And then, like, he told me about this book, and I read this book, which for me personally was this thing where everything became clear. But I also think it's like for everybody, there is his own book or his own person who you meet. Also Nicola Luzardi is this specialist in script consulting from Europe, like, for example, who was very helpful to me. He was my mentor at Serialized, but I also met him later. Everybody has a bit of a different type of thinking. So I think for everybody, it's his own person or his own book, which speaks to like which he or her can understand. Like, for me, like John York, for example, was somebody who spoke my language and who like took my hand and finally explained to me this thing I struggled to understand for years.
What was this thing? Can you explain it to us?
You for in this beginning of my journey, the first 2 or 3 years when I was trying to develop shows, is like, how do you connect the 3 aspects, like the character arc, the theme, and the plot? Like, how do they work together? Because in some books you read, how do you do the plot? Oh, here you have to have, here the problem is set up, and here the problem exasperates, and here is your plot should go into crisis mode, and your character has to like solve the crisis. Okay, good, fine, but how is this connected to the fact that this should be a story about does love exist, or like romantic love vs sexual love, and how how do this all different things, the theme, the character development, where the character, I don't know, the want and need, character wants one thing, but he actually needs something else. And then the plot with all these crises and expositions and stuff, how do these things become one? Like that was my struggle. And like, I don't know, Into the Woods was the book that helped me solve it somehow.
So was this exposed in Pauline? Did you get it right on that one?
I mean, no, no, but it also has to do with the way the shows are produced. Like Pauline was my early project, considering like I was just a couple years in Germany, and it's also somebody like if I don't know who's our audience, but if our audience is aspiring creators and writers of TV shows, like one should understand it. Like just because you created the concept and even wrote a good pilot and whatever, you made genius material, and even like in my case, material that was sold to the broadcaster, it doesn't mean you're gonna have like a decisive role in how it gets made. And it's also very different, I think, in the, like as far as I understand, in the UK, the situation with creators is better, and like the one who created the show, especially if they wrote the selling pilot, has more say than in continental Europe, where it's always a matter of conflicts, negotiations, and like it takes, like I haven't yet figured it out, like it takes a while until you really can say, oh, this thing that's on screen I'm responsible for, this is the story I wanted to tell, and this is the story that's told. Like my only experience like this is so far with the show I made in Russia just before the war, because there had like a very good relationship with the producer, and I can really, this was the first time I really had this experience that the audience on forums are discussing the theme that I wrote in the pitch paper when I launched the show. This was like the first time, and I was like, okay, so this can really happen, because like sometimes this is not what happens.
Interesting. I was looking at Pauline yesterday. I've seen the first 3 episodes.
Okay.
I won't give any screeners or spoilers, but it's very exciting. There is a moment in the room, in Lucas's room. I noticed an image here. Can you see it? Oh my god.
Yeah,
With the
yeah. Yeah, I see. I remember what you're talking about. Yeah, but he says, "This is my mother." Yeah.
Oh, I see. You know what? Because I thought this was you.
Oh, really? I
Yeah.
don't know. Like you see, I'm not a showrunner of Pauline, so like, it's the producers who are showrunners. I don't know if they meant that. It would be funny, but okay, interesting.
Yeah, because of the eyes and the hair's all tied back and it's black hair and you got black hair, etc. Interesting. Okay. So tell me, so essentially, thanks to the education, you pitched stories, you got an agent, and but how did you actually get on board? And were you on set? Did you collaborate with other writers during the development of Pauline? Um, well, what happened?
So, I mean, again, this is a pretty dramatic story, and I don't know how much of it I should like publicly say. I like, so again, I wasn't. There is a difference between being a writer and being a showrunner. So with Pauline, the deal was from the beginning that, because I didn't have experience running shows, especially in Germany, that the producers, Matthias Kasboner and Matthias Murman and Philip Kasboner would be showrunners, right? So that means I was not on set, and I was not the one making final decisions about how the show was made. So what happened, I wrote the pilot and the Bible, my agent sold it to Netflix, then BTF, which is a production company, came on board. We had another writer's room, which I led as a head writer, as a development process with Netflix, where we developed the story of the season, like kind of series, like outlines of episodes.
How many
Then we got
pages? How many pages is that when you develop it?
it really depends on the project and on the level of like it wasn't very long. I guess it was a couple pages per episode at this point, but I can't tell you this is always like this. This varies, you know. And what you need to get a like, because there is a development green light and a production green light, and then on a case by case basis, you might need to have 4 scripts written before you get a production green light, or you might have one script. Like in that case, it was this one pilot and the episode outlines, at which point we got a production green light. And then there was a bigger writers room with like a group of writers, about 5 people, me and like Sebastian Colli, and the producers also participating, to like, you know, break the episodes, you know, and like make them more detailed. And then each writer got their own episode. Like I got 2 episodes to write, and then this all has been rewritten many times,
I see.
you know, in the process with Netflix, and then with Disney, when it like it had to be rewritten again.
Were you
But
involved
like
in the
again,
Disney
I was not
aspect?
on top of this. I was not the
Of course.
person making decisions in
Sure.
this specific case, due to my relationship with the producers.
All right, but
So
were you,
again, I'm not responsible
I understand.
for how Pauline looks on screen, or even for the whole story, the way it's told. It is the same story. It has the main plot, like the same plot points, but not completely, it's not completely my vision. Let's put it this way.
Okay. What about the dialogue? Were you involved in the writing of the dialogue? And
I wrote 2 episodes dialogue.
which
Other people
ones?
wrote first and the fourth. But again, first of all, it has been rewritten many times after I wasn't even on board anymore. Like I wasn't on the process till the end. Plus, it was like, you know, the dialogue of the series is in German. So
Yes.
it was also naturally rewritten into German. So like when I watch it, I'm rather surprised when I find scenes that like, wow, it's exactly how I wrote them, because this is not what I expected mainly. But again, this is not, I mean, this is the kind of process a young beginning writer who like somehow created a show and got it sold should expect in continental Europe. But this is not it's not how I think it should be, and it's also not, you know, not how I would do, and not how I'm going to do my next show, for example.
Okay. So what about America? Is it different there as well? Is it?
I'm not sure, like, because you know, I think American market is very different. I'm just like, all I can tell is stuff I know from podcasts or Twitter. I understand it's pretty much the same, that you like, you know, if you're a young creator, writer, and even like the studio wants your project, you need to find a showrunner,
Yes.
right? You need to find somebody with experience, because like, you know, running a show is also combining like creativity with budget, schedules, and a lot of other things. So you need to find the showrunner, and what are the relationship then between this kind of less experienced writer and the showrunner. I don't know how it works in America. Like I understand, for example, in case of the Severance, right? The creator was not really experienced in TV writing, and a more experienced showrunner was brought on board. I also understand that the relationship maybe hasn't been perfect. Like that's what I read, and that like this more experienced showrunner left the project by the end of season 1, but then he was still brought back on board, because you know this is what happened. But I do feel that the creator of Severance had more influence on the product than I had with Pauline, for example. So like, but I'm not sure. I think America has at least institutions at place, you know, where there are rules, whereas in Europe, you know, I think it's about inventing every time anew what is the best way for the project to work, for the team to be built.
Interesting. Are you allowed to talk about remuneration? What kind of
No, I'm
money
sorry.
um
I
a
can't
screenwriter
tell.
get, or does that all depend on so many factors?
All depends on the all I can tell you, and this is something I'm discovering now, that there are kind of, I mean, of course there are industry standards, but they're pretty big. There are no rules. There are some rules, but like it's really very individual. And like I just advise everybody before signing up for things to have a lot of you know, counsel to talk to other people, find out what they get, talk to lawyers. I have never listened to lawyer, like all the serialized and other workshops I've done. They always invite like IP media lawyers to talk to students, and I've never paid attention at this point because I was always like, who cares? Like, I just want to like get something done. I just like, what is the chance I will ever sell anything? So like, I just never listened to these people, and like, so now I'm paying the price for it, having to pay lawyers to find out stuff I was actually being told before and just skipped like and didn't come to sessions and stuff like this.
Yeah, but on your defense, you can't be everything. You can't be the writer, the lawyer, or can you? No, you can't. Yeah, right. You do need.
If you want to be not just a writer, but if you really want to like run, like to be a creator and showrunner, this makes you always halfway a producer, because you have to be like, and this kind of obliges you to suddenly become a specialist in many different fields, including legal too.
Interesting. So do you have a specific genre that you focus on? And what is that?
Okay, so like it used to be, and you will see both in Pauline and like the next show that is coming, like I started out, and I'm still like, I really like, anything that is like what you can call speculative fiction, which involves both fantasy, horror, and sci-fi, like any kind of idea that like is out of reality. And this is where I started out. But in the process of doing this career, I have discovered that like my actual talent is comedy, which is like not surprising. It's like something like, it's a Jewish talent. And also, I guess, like, you have, when you are miserable enough, you're ready to do comedy. So I think in the process of trying to like make it into a business, I got miserable enough to start doing comedy. And now, like, this is my preferred, like for now, it's also like the life stage. Uh, and especially with like things that have been happening in politics and everywhere in the last years, I feel like humor is the only way to like really answer. So I usually do a mix. I do comedy with something. Like my next show would be comedy crime. I'm now doing a movie with a streamer, which is comedy action. So like I'm not into like pure comedy, such as like sitcom or some kind of like dramedy without real like plot hook. So I like to have like
What's the
some,
plot hook? Give us an
you
example.
know, you can always like count on being funny, but it's also good if there are some stakes in the story which also make people to want to watch it, not only for comedy. Like, I don't know, Slow Horses is a good example. It's like every scene is funny and genius, but you also want to know what's going to happen to people, who's going to die and who's going to live. So I like to like because I work on the market, on the commercial products, right? I want to be really safe that I deliver both like a lot of reasons for people to keep watching. So it's funny and it's good, like it's feels good to be in, but there are also like, reasons to want to know what happens next, to binge it.
Interesting.
But this is a bit like how I am as an audience member. Like I love comedy, like pure comedy too. I watch it, but of course this is not something where you get hooked and you can't stop, like like comedy, like which is pure comedy, like you watch one episode and then maybe in a week you will watch another one or maybe not. And then when a show has also like a genre plot device, then then I just binge it, then I can't stop.
What about crime? Do you think something like Breaking Bad is comedic?
Of course, yeah, that's a very good example. Like when I say I do comedy, this genre, that's what I mean. Like Slow Horses, Breaking Bad, stuff which kind of combines, for example, crime and comedy, or it could also combine horror and comedy. Like, Pauline in some ways is also comedic, especially if you go later in the season. So I like this kind of combos. But I generally like to have not one genre, to have like genre crossovers, which is my curse in a way, because it's really hard to develop those. It's always hard to find the right combo. but it's also very hard talking with other stakeholders like broadcasters. Like it takes time to make sure you're really on the same page. When you say comedy crime, everybody imagines a certain proportion of comedy and crime, and to like kind of, you know, to find out which proportion who imagines takes some testing. Like you write, and then actually we wanted it to be funnier, or we wanted it to be more serious, you know.
So
This
just
kind of stuff happens.
coming back to your pitching and treatments, how do you measure success? How do you know what works and what doesn't? And can you give us an example of failure and how failure has introduced success on a particular project?
You mean how do I understand when I write, when I prepare the material, whether it's like a winner?
Yeah. And where do you get those
Before
ideas?
pitching? You
Yes.
don't mean like when I pitch and they say we want to buy it, that's how I understand. But do you mean how do I understand before?
Yes, before. Where do you get your ideas from? Then once you write it, what kind of feedback do you get? Do you improve on it? And then how do you know whether it's working or not?
Oh, good questions. So first of all, where I get my ideas from, I got this advice long ago from one Russian producer who actually now lives in the UK, who always said your success is where your own, like you have to write about stuff that really interests you, right? That you really bothers you. So the success happens if somehow something that bothers you also bothers like huge numbers of people, like the all, like, you know, like this mass audiences, which is, you know, I think a lot of writers struggle with it because like a lot of writers come from like intellectual milieus, and they've been bothered with, I don't know, whether, you know, human condition in like consumptive society is important, but this is not necessarily what the audience wants. So yeah, I always try to like, I kind of, I don't know, I try to like mediomatically. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but like, yeah, I kind of try to connect to the zeitgeist, like right now, and like feel what bothers me. And from all this, find like there is some stuff which clearly very few people care about. And then like to find the stuff that others care about. So this is where I start from.
Mhm.
I always try to come up with ideas that like I haven't seen before, that are like surprising, because this is just important when you sell. You know, you don't want to come, even if you have a great idea, but it's like really similar to five things that have been just done. It's hard to sell. It's just like, you know, the truth, the hard truth. Uh, how this happens, I can't really explain. Like where, like I'm not sure how to say where this I can't like. So first, I always look for the theme. I look for like what do I want to say about, to tell about, and then I always think, okay, this thing about, I want it to be some genre. I want it to be fun. So where's this fun concept? And then somehow it comes out. Then I try to make sure that like if we're talking about TV, right, not movies, that it has legs. And this is like the biggest job of TV producer and TV creator and TV writer, because not everything, not every good story idea is a good idea for a TV show. Like you need to feel that it has enough potential to give you enough story, not for like 1 hour, 20 minutes, but for like at least 8 hours. And, you know, everybody's dream is to have like many seasons. So it's not one story. It has to be some machine that generates many stories. So I like try to make sure my idea has that. And then I have a very good kind of system of how I write pitches, which I learned at Serialized, and
Tell us about it.
adjusted it. What?
What's the system?
Like the log line, apparently, then the premise. Usually I like, because I always like, I try to find very cool premises, you know, like Pauline, I don't know, teenage girl gets pregnant from the devil but ends up using superpowers against the evil itself, and whatever, reversal of Rosemary's Baby trope in a feminist manner, you know. And so something like this, I write this, then so like that it's clear what is the story, what are these legs. Then I write tone and style. Then I write theme. I like really clearly say what is it about, and it's also
Wait a
important for
second.
me.
Tone and style. So, Pauline, how would you have pitched that tone and style?
Well, again, how would I pitch the tone and style I wanted Pauline to be, and I'd rather not go into this because it's
Let's
right.
continue.
Again, I'm not responsible for tone and
Sensitive,
style of
yes,
current
of
Pauline.
course. So then there's
Uh,
obligations.
but like whatever, you say like for example, current Pauline would be like it's a superhero drama with a comedic twist, and a new like female character, and set in like that was like a big input from the producers, which I actually really like, that they created this Gotham city out of Germany. Like it's not taking place in any specific German city. It's instead this kind of like a mesh of like generally a German city per se, which was not their idea, but I think it's pretty interesting. So if I were writing a pitch and I wanted to do something like this would also be in the tone and style section, you know. And then I come to the theme, which is like really important for me because like until I formulate what it is really about, this kind of the main dramatic question dilemma, I can't really develop anything else. So I formulate the theme, and then I usually say something like, now I'm going to show you how like the protagonist and all characters of the story are, connect, like show different aspects of the theme. And this is what I do then I describe the characters, but it's not just about, oh, this is a fun character. It's always like this character is fun.
Okay,
He's doing
let me call you back about that. Can I call you in 10 minutes? Okay, I'll call you in 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Okay. You're talking about characters now, just going through the rundown of the run up or run down of the process. We talked about treatment, log line, theme, and now you're talking about characters, and you were giving the example of Pauline, perhaps, how you develop it. What do you think about with the character?
As I told you, I think about like the whole thing as like for me, but I think it should be like this. Like the theme is central, right? It's what you want to say, so when you think of the characters, like you have your protagonist, who's the main person struggling with
Give us an
like some
example.
question.
Give us an example, very specific example.
Well, like I don't know, Succession, for example, right? Like technically you would call Candle
something you've written. Something you've written.
Like, okay, Pauline, for example, right? Let's talk about Pauline. So, generally you could say her dilemma is like to go on the side of good or evil, to give her like to sell her baby or not, more or less, right? To sell her baby to get some perks, or to not sell her baby and stay on the side of good, right? And that is her biggest dilemma. And then you would have different characters who have different approaches to this, in like their own little dilemmas dealing with good and evil, and who both affect your protagonist in their journey by supporting her, being her best friend, and saying, no, no, stay on the side of good, you can make it, or by somebody else who tell her, no, no, you have no chances, if you don't go on the side of evil, you're going to be fucked. So you don't really have a choice. So, this is how it should work normally.
And then we have someone else. Is this the McGovern or no? I'm not sure, but no, it's definitely got to do with the story. There's someone called Britt.
Yeah, Britta, yeah, the antagonist, yeah. Who, like I would say Britta, she thinks she's on the side of good, but clearly she's not, which is also often what happens, especially like right now. I think there is a time when like everybody wants to be like in Germany they even have this joke like die Guten, the good ones, but like when you try to be the good one, you are, you're always in danger of falling into arrogance and actually becoming evil, so I think this is Britta's role in this story.
Is she like the utopian? Do you have a sort of how would I put it? There is something about Jung's concept, right? You have these shit. What do they call archetypes?
Yeah.
Is she an archetype?
No, she shouldn't be. I mean, you can like, as always, like in a story, like, any kind of character system, like Jung archetypes, like, you can actually like look at any story and fit any system of characters and see how it reflects there, right? I wasn't thinking of Carl Gustav Jung while developing Pauline, but I'm sure it could also fit, you know. But I mean, generally, she's an antagonist, and because it's like all a bit comedic, she's this person who supposedly is doing a lot of good things, you know, delivering food to poor people, but de facto, you know, doesn't notice this very struggling person who's like she's up against her, you know, even though Pauline would need most help. And like I don't know, it has a social dimension there, you know, because Britta is pretty rich and Pauline is like coming from a socially, you know, challenged background. And very often, you know, kind of when you're more socially privileged, like you're trying to do good but actually you're rather promoting yourself, and in this process you might unknowingly become evil.
Mm, mm. How much of this is connected with your modern times and what you and your environment? How much did you take from your environment in terms?
It's very connected to modern times because, like, if you understand Pauline, she's originally she's this like anti-youth, anti-natalist. You know, she's this person who thinks nobody should have children because the world is basically going down. You know, this everything is collapsing. So like people should have less children because we're killing the environment. And you know, generally she's like pretty hopeless person, and her art like which is very modern. If you think of young people, a lot of young people feel this way. And a part of her arc is, you know, finding hope, and like kind of, you know, accepting that, yeah, evil exists in the world, but, you know, it doesn't mean we need to give up and like stop living and killing ourselves. You know, that there is hope. It's all very, very modern in this sense.
Where'd you get the idea for the devil and Lucas?
Well, so it's based on true story. It's all comes from me getting pregnant pretty young, not as a teenager, but you know, I got pregnant at 28, and for my generation, this is almost like I felt like a teenage mother for most of my life because my friends are now in their 40s and still nobody has children. So having a child at 28 I felt really out of place. And the idea was basically that when I got pregnant and when I was giving birth, suddenly, like, even though I was really scared that this is going to make me weak, because this is the stereotype of what motherhood does to women, like that you become vulnerable, I have experienced this like an extreme empowerment. And like, I remember that after I gave birth, I had this huge blast of energy and understanding, okay, now I can achieve anything, you know, somehow. And that's what the story is about. It was about, you know, like stories like Rosemary's Baby. There is usually this devil makes a woman pregnant and the woman is like a victim. You know, she becomes completely passive, she's just a vessel for the antichrist. And the whole story is Pauline is no, fuck, if you make a woman pregnant, in the end she's gonna decide what an antichrist is gonna do and how to use the superpowers, you know. And so it's ironic, like you think she will be a victim, but actually she's gonna overpower, you know, the devil herself, which is the mother of Lucas. You know, she's gonna get strength from it. So that's basically the idea, that, you know, being a woman and being a mother makes you stronger and not weaker. That's the point.
What's your favorite line from Pauline?
Not a line, it's actually a scene. It's like a visual moment when Lucas, you know, when Tony, Pauline's best friend, when he comes to, you know, to greet her from the hospital after an abortion. And there is this very funny thing that came in the writers' room, either from Sebastian Colley or Natalie Thomas, that he's bringing balloons, you know, happy abortion kind of thing, which I find really funny. And how they're discussing what's going on with Pauline, when Pauline herself is like stuck on the building just behind them and they don't see it. And like, I really like this. I think it's really funny.
Ended up like that.
Yeah. And they're like just talking and she's just after, like, I think it's like, it's something that worked really well, you know, in execution. So I really like that.
Yeah, I agree. That was a good scene. I saw that last night. Fantastic. Did you actually, so then you got the idea for the characters. Do you write dialogue? Did you write the first episode before you
I
present?
wrote a pilot, yes, at this, as I told you, at Cannes Series Institute, with a lot of help from, like, they had great mentors like Sarah Linton, who used to be a script consultant then, and now she's a producer, I think, in BBC Studios, and she was like an extreme help, and also Cyril Tish, who is a French writer and also mentor and screenwriting tutor. So like there were a lot of people there helping out. Yes, I wrote the pilot during this residency first, but then there was another rewrite already like in production process. But yes, like kind of you need to write a pilot to start feeling your characters and getting a proof of concept that like what you have as an idea can actually work as a script.
Was that 40 pages? 1 minute per page, 1 minute per,
Six, I think, 36 or something like this. Yeah, 36, a
right?
bit more than a minute.
What about the politics of it all? Is there politics at that
What do you
level
mean,
as
the
writing?
politics in a story or politics in producing TV shows?
The politics of the development of TV shows and networks and
As I
content.
told you, as I told you, I'm not fully responsible for what you see on screen as a Pauline because politically, as a young writer, you don't have much power, and it takes time to learn to
Yes.
navigate all that. Which also comes like I don't know. I feel more hopeful about really executing my writer's vision now, which both comes with like just being more craftful, getting more experience, being really confident after all the stuff I've done before, because I also worked, I don't know, as a head writer on several shows. I saw, how a commissioner can come and say, oh, now we changed the direction. We need to rewrite the whole thing in 2 weeks. So once you gain these experiences, you gain some kind of muscle, to be able to really be the person in the driving seat. This is from one point of view, but also you gain understanding because there's so many stakeholders involved in producing a TV show. You gain understanding of like what is everybody's role and how to balance everybody's opinions and still keep the vision running. So this comes with experience, but also with knowing people, just gaining confidence, you know, uh, especially if you are a woman or if you are an immigrant. And, as they say, somebody told me like writers, they want to be liked. You want to always say yes to people because you want them to like you. And at some point, you come to the point where, okay, it's important to have good relationships. It's also important, to be able to say no when you have to. So it is like it takes a while, especially in my case, but listen, it's really hard. Like I think other people would have different journeys because my journey is really crazy, being an immigrant in Germany who started up writing in English and also not being an immigrant from this kind of groups that are traditionally, I mean, recently protected, right? Because like I'm pretty white and I wouldn't go around and say, oh, I'm this underprivileged person who needs to get some special treatment because I think like just I'm not underprivileged in this way. So it's a special, like, I mean, I still find it pretty crazy uh, that I've managed to make any shows in this situation.
How'd you learn German so quickly?
Well, I learned. It's not. It wasn't completely from zero. I learned it. It was my like in gymnasium as a kid. It was my like second foreign language. Like in continental Europe, which Russia used to belong to, you usually learn English plus one more foreign language. So German was something I learned then. But then, yeah, here I just I wouldn't say it's quick. I know people who learned it much quicker because they like really spent time learning it, which I never did because I was working and I was working in English. So it was more like learning German was something I could only do on the weekend or something like this. And I'm still not done, you
Okay.
know. Right now I'm listening to a lot of German speaking rap in order to like pick up on some, I don't know, poetics of the language, which I only get from hip hop somehow.
Can you give us an example? What are you getting from hip hop?
I don't know. It's like I listened to this. There was this one pretty famous German hip hop band called Antilopen Gang, who make a lot of interesting songs, like about politics and sex and stuff like this. So I don't know. I just listen to their poetry and I learn it sometimes by heart just by listening.
Interesting. Do you get to travel for writing? Can you write anywhere, or do you have to have a specific place? Does it have to be quiet, or do you write at night, or what's the process here?
I can write absolutely anywhere. I'm a bit on the spectrum, and like my boyfriend always jokes, but like, yeah, there have been many situations when I was writing like in the middle of the crowded room on the train. Like it's very easy for me to turn the outside world off. So I can write anywhere. And yeah, like, but this ideal life of a writer who like, makes money from South America is not really realistic, because the moment stuff becomes real, the moment you get at least a development deal, ideally you don't write alone. It's a collective work. You collaborate with producers, you collaborate with other writers.
Mm.
Like, ideally you put the director on board very soon, so you can do all of this on Zooms, but some people still prefer meeting in person. And like, it's even a question for myself, like sometimes these in-person meetings are very important. So when the show is really happening, that means I'm somehow tied to you know Berlin, or like in case of Pauline, I had to go a lot to Köln because the production company is in Köln. So yeah, you have to in the end, and then when you go into production, you have to scout locations and you have to be on set. You
Oh,
can't do this from South America.
I mean, well, were you scouting locations?
No, but I will for my next show. I will, absolutely. Like, this is what, like, this is what you have to want to, like, as a writer. I mean, it depends. Some people, they're just comfortable with churning out scripts and then giving it over to somebody. But like, for example, I this is not what I want to do right now. I want to, like, see the vision on screen.
From
So for that, you
beginning
need to scout locations.
to it, right? You want
What?
to be part of the whole process, from story
Yes.
concept to delivery to audience to
The final cut. Yeah, to, like, making cuts and like working with the you
some.
know editor and stuff like this.
Mm. How do you work with the editor as a writer? I was a was
I
producer.
mean, you see, like, this is not a writer's work. This is like a producer showrunner work. But for example, as I told you, I was lucky to release this Russian show before the war. I would just get a cut in Frame.io and then make notes the same way I do with the script, but just in Frame. In Frame.io, you can give notes,
Uh-huh,
like
that's a
comments. So I would give comments, and then we would maybe have a, like, usually director does a cut,
yeah.
and then you, as a, again, this is not what writers usually do, but a showrunner has to do it. A showrunner producer especially has to do it, both to ensure the story is consistent, but also to ensure that the broadcaster will, like, sign off the episode, because, like, the director makes a cut based on his vision, but sometimes you need some stuff to go faster, or sometimes you need to, like, restructure things, or sometimes somebody's really in love with a scene which lasts for 5 minutes, and it can't happen this way, and it has to become 2 minutes,
What's
unfortunately.
so when you do work collaboratively in the process, what's your relationship like with the director and the actors?
It depends. It depends on, like, the every situation and every setup, and my role too. Am I just a writer? If you're just a writer, the relationship, at least in continental Europe, would be that the director is going to come and say, I hate all of this. I have a completely different vision. I don't like, I think it's about a different theme. It has to have a different tonality. Rewrite everything now, or I will rewrite it myself. This is pretty common in Europe, where, the roots are in film industry, but directors were the most important people. So how do you deal with it? from my perspective, I think it's like, and I need the director, right? I need his vision, I need his craft, I need him. So I think the best is when the director comes on board as early as possible. And like with my next show, I'm looking for directors who also write, to make them a part of the writing process, even as I can't yet attach them as directors because there is no production green light yet, so that we really form a common vision, that is the best. And actually in this Russian show, which is called First Class, it's a very successful, I think, experience in terms of like this unity of vision. So the writing collective consisted of me as a head writer, the director, plus one more writer, and the director was writing scripts, and then she took this experience over to the set, which is really good because meant she knew the story really well, which is a huge problem when especially when you have one director shooting 8 episodes, meaning you're in a location shooting 50 scenes, each belonging to like different episodes, just to keep the consistency. Like if you haven't written it, it's really hard. And there it was better because she really knew the story. Although even then, sometimes you look at the scene that's shot and you're like, how come? Like, it was supposed to be a completely different tempo, when we were writing it. And now it's like suddenly, like, I don't know, people are supposed to be very scared because in the story right now, a child is missing, but they're having like a nice walk, and the dialogue, which was supposed to be super tense, is very relaxed. Like it happens, so that's why you also have to be on set as a writer to constantly keep keep control of those things.
Do you ever consider writing with actors?
Writers too, yes. I think that the writing job and acting it's very similar. Basically what I do as a writer, I act a scene and then I act it in my head, or sometimes I even like act it, and then I write it down. So I think actors are uniquely positioned to also be good writers. Maybe, so like when an actor wants to write to, it's very good, especially like when I think of like there is one show I have in development which would be centered around like a woman who has to be very comedic. This is where I think, oh, I need a writing actress who would write her own lines and then deliver them in a funny way.
Have there ever been points during production when the actors just thought, "Oh no, this line doesn't work. Can we try something else?"
Of course. Sometimes they offer their own lines, or sometimes, like, again, this is why it's important to have a writer on set, because sometimes they just say, okay, this line doesn't work and this is a different line. And sometimes it's totally okay. And sometimes it's like, no, because this one word in this line would, I don't know, fuck up the story that comes later. And then, like, you have to exchange about these things. That's why it's like really important to have a writer on set, because not only the actor might change the line, you might you know you have written that there is a truck on the background, and then like comes production day and you don't have this truck for some reason. I don't know, the truck driver got sick, and you have to, now it's a giraffe, and you have to rewrite stuff to make it work.
So we're going to finally end with a few quick questions. Tell us, Elena, who are your influences? Briefly.
Like the great mentors I had, such as Nicole Zardi, Frank Spotnitz, I would mention like Sarah Linton. So these are like the people I met in real life. In terms of like the shows I watched, it's really crazy. Like it's like there are shows, of course, like years ago, shows like Breaking Bad or Mad Men or stuff, but it changes. Like right now, I'd rather tell you what I watch now. Like I watch Slow Horses, going crazy about it. There is a great show called Louder Milk on Netflix, which is a very simple comedy about a guy who runs an Alcoholic Anonymous group, which is just very smart. And it's like you just watch it and you just go like, wow, that's funny, but it's also very smart, which I like watching. I don't know. I think Slow Horses are like the current great thing that has been done, and there where I also go like I learn a lot from it. Like I just learned the last season, watched the last season that's available and I was around episode 4 or 3, and I was like, wow, it's already so intense. I have to up my game, because what they have in the middle of the season is something I would find sufficient for like the final climax, and my middle would be less tense, but they make it more tense, and that's right. So I don't know, it's always like watching and seeing, like thinking of the shows, how do people like get out of complicated situations, like how do they solve similar complex questions as I have.
Where do you think the future is with
That's
changing
a different
audiences?
question. I actually, so I don't think the future is in TV series, unfortunately. This is my biggest concern, because my daughter and like her friends, so people who are 13, 14, they don't watch TV shows. They don't watch a series. It's not just like the format of like a story told over 8, 10 episodes is just not at all something they're interested in. And I see a lot, like they have this different crazy kind of content, such as character AI, like creating a group of characters using ChatGPT and then like interacting with them. Different platforms where like they, like, where you can take an existing IP, but you put yourself and your friends inside this IP and control the story. So the way they consume media is a lot of like co-creating the media, as opposed to just passively consuming it, not necessarily in a gaming way, in a bit of a different way. So uh, that's why I also have, and I want to stay relevant in 15 years. I don't want to like completely become irrelevant. So I'm working on the project, my first project in the realm of AI storytelling, but I don't mean like AI replacing a screenwriter or an artist. It's more like there are forms of storytelling that are impossible with humans, but possible with AI. Like the thing we're doing now, it's just a small experiment where basically, like, there is this AI character called Oberon, who talks to you and like makes an impression of you, and then like creates an escape room out of your psyche. So like you enter in VR, in this case, an escape room which is like your personality, and you have to solve it, like, and it still works. What's interesting is that it still works with some key concepts which we use in dramaturgy, as in AI tries to understand the key internal conflict of a person he's speaking to, and then express it as some kind of scary puzzle you need to solve to get out. So like this is the kind of stuff I experiment with as a hobby, but somehow I feel I'm with the people who are saying in 10 years they won't be movies, games, and something else. It will be just like another form which is very personalized, which might still have a lot of creativity, human creativity when it comes to storytelling, but needs more, like, it's a there are stories that will evolve and grow with the audiences, together with the audiences. I feel like this is the future. you know Not meaning like I would always love to make another great comedy, but it's just like generally I feel this is where we're going. And even if not, I just find it fascinating, this like experimenting with this. So I do this on the side.
Wow, that's very interesting.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
what other things you got planned?
I mean, right now, there is this, as I tell, there is this new show I'm launching, hopefully, like launching as in starting many year process of writing and producing it. And I'm also working on a film, and like there are a few more projects that are in the state of the pitch, which I would also like to move further. But like, if I get into one show now, then I will be pretty busy. Let's put it this way. I'm also trying to discover what is this life work balance everybody's talking about. I
What is
mean, I'm
that?
not sure yet. I heard the concept.
What's
So
the concept?
life work balance. Have you heard it? Some
Oh
people
yeah,
say there is
yeah.
something like life that exists somewhere. and you have to balance it with work. So I know the work part, but the rest is unknown. So I might explore it more.
Okay, now thanks very much, Elena. I'm going to get your last name right, Elena Lyubarskaya.
It works, absolutely.
This podcast is kindly sponsored by Camera Museum of London at 44 Museum Street. Thank you for listening to a Fish Out of Water podcast. This is your host, Richard Lipman. Should you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please get in touch.